The what? Oh, if I had the whole cast, it would have been cooler. Yeah, I know. I got my stitches out yesterday, and the doctor looked at my hand and was like, and I was like, oh no, I'm losing my hand. But she was like, it's just not where we want it to be, so keep taking antibiotics, whatever. What did you say?
Is it switched to the other side? It's not something you want to do?
My hand is not, it's not healing the way that yeah. No, it's a good joke. It's a good joke. Okay. Sorry, we recorded all this bullshit. So I want to talk about how the internet works. Help me stay on track today, okay? So talk about how the internet works. So we probably all have a pretty good grasp of the high level, right? I make a request to a server. The server returns a website back to me, right? We understand that on some level. Some of you might know it deeper than that. Some of you might be like, I don't know, man, I type the address in and then I go to Amazon and I don't really care how it works. Now you have to care, right? So before we get into the nitty-gritty of how that whole cycle works, we're going to draw it out. Let's forget about the internet for just a second and talk about like the U.S. Postal Service. Let's talk about mail. Let's imagine for a second that it's like the late 1800s, right? And we live on a farm and we want to buy some new farm equipment. And lucky for us, there's this new thing called a mail order catalog, right? And so we can send away for the mail order catalog. We get the catalog back. I fill out a form with all the stuff I want. I send it back. The form gets processed and I get my stuff, right? Pretty similar to what we do with Amazon, right? I go to Amazon.com and it's actually happening the same way, it's just happening so much faster. I make a request to Amazon.com. Amazon sends me a form back. They send it back. They just send it back as HTML and CSS, and it takes 4 seconds. And we also, we think about visiting a website. This used to, when I was a kid, and I would think visiting a website, I'm going there, right? But you're not. You're not going anywhere. You're actually, it's delivered to you. The website is delivered to you, and then all that code lives on your machine, and it's just yours. It's just there, right? So you make the request to Amazon. They give you the form, fill it out, send it back. They process it, just like with the mail order catalog, right? They figure out what you want, what you ordered. They send you back, okay, cool, it's coming, and then you get it in the mail. Make sense? So I just want us to see this parallel because it's going to help us understand, once we get into the details of how request and response work, it's going to be like your head's going to start spinning with all the things we have to remember. But it's really similar to the mail. So when I fill out my form to send to, order my farm equipment or whatever, there's some protocols that I have to follow, right? I can't just write, I want shovels, and then throw that in the mailbox and pray that it all works out, right? There's some things I really have to do, like what needs to be there if I'm going to mail the company and ask for shovels. What would I have to include? I'm asking that.
Address.
Yeah, you have to include which address?
Their address.
Their address. What else would I need to include?
Your address.
My address, probably somewhere, right? Like, where are you going to send it back to? What else might I need to include? My name, yeah, right? So if I wanted to include my address, could I take like a Snickers wrapper, write my address on it, crumble it up, and then put it in the thing? No, right? I know. These are silly, stupid questions. But what I'm trying to get at is there's certain information I need to include, and there's also a really strict way I need to format it, right? That address needs to be on the front of the envelope. It needs to be in the center. That's where it's going, right? And then up in the corner is it this corner or this corner? Now I'm backwards. But the return address, right? And so what I'm trying to get across to you is there's certain information I need to include when I'm interacting with the mail, and I have to format it a certain way, right? So that it gives extra meaning to the data, basically, right? Because I have 2 addresses on an envelope, and they're just by themselves, they're just addresses. But depending on where I put them, they add extra meaning, right? If it's in the center, that's where it's going. If it's up in the corner, that is where it's coming from, right? So just keep all this in mind as we break down this request and response and the way it actually works when we go to Amazon, okay? So let's do that. Let's draw this whole thing out. So I'm going to be on my computer. bad. I mean, kind of bad, but. I want to go to Amazon.com and look at shoes, right? So I have my, actually, you know what, let's not do the computer because the computer is important, but what we're going to really actually be working with and talking a ton about is the browser. So let's do the browser. This, and I'll make this address bar huge. And I do like www.amazon.com/shoes. Say that's what I type in. Okay. So now what happens when I type this in? I type this in and I hit enter. The browser does a ton of stuff for me, right? Because in order to make this request to Amazon, there's actually a ton of stuff we're going to draw out in the middle here that has to happen. And basically what it is the envelope needs to get addressed, right? The envelope needs to get addressed. Everything needs to go where it is. The envelope needs to get packed with any information that's needed. All that stuff needs to happen, and it is a huge pain in the ass to do yourself, right? That's why we have the browser. This is one of the many amazing things the browser does, right? It makes this request for you. It addresses the envelope for you. So we'll skip that for a second. We'll come back to everything it does. But it comes here, and it makes what's called an HTTP request. Right? Then it comes over here and it hits the server. And what's a server? You may know what a server is. This is how I draw a server. Maybe there's some lights or buttons on it. I don't really know. I never really saw one of those. What's a server?
Storage.
Storage, that's part of it. It's stored, it will probably have a database, but it's more than that. Yeah?
It's a computer that's in charge of.
I didn't hear that last part. It's a computer that
Gives you files.
Yeah. And actually, the most important part is it's just another computer, right? It's just another computer running code. They usually look like this. There's big towers because we're usually not interacting with it the same way we do a desktop, right? And it might be more powerful than other things, but it's just another computer. So all we're really doing with the internet, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but it's important for us to remember for the rest of our time here, is it's just computers talking back and forth, right? Exchanging information. But we're able to do it over vast distances, and there's a lot that goes on in the middle here, but for our purposes, it's just these two computers talking, right? Cool, so the server gets my request, opens the envelope, reads my request. Oh, you wanted some shoes? Cool. Let me show you all the shoes we have. It sends me all the code back, and then the browser gets to do its second awesome thing that it does. So the first thing it does is it makes HTTP requests. The second thing it does is it parses responses. So when we're going back and forth, the only thing, yes? Yeah, great question. What does parse actually mean? It just means I get a bunch of data and I need to sift through it and maybe give it meaning, right? Or sift through it and find what I want, right? So that doesn't feel like the best explanation. Someone have a better explanation of parsing off the top of their head?
To me, it seems more like translation, even. Like,
yeah, that could be it. Like, yeah,
interpreting.
I read through this data and like figure out what I need from it and how to display it sometimes, right? Yeah. It's kind of all those. There's a succinct definition out there that we'll find for you. But it's basically just, it gets a mess, it parses through it and turns it into something we can see. That's a really quick way to say it. Okay. So these are the two amazing things our browser does, right? For us. It makes HTTP requests and it can parse response. So the server will send a response back, and it's an HTTP. We'll talk about what HTTP is in a second. Response. Parsing is just untangling. That's a great way. Yeah, that's good. HTTP response into the browser. The browser parses it, and then all of a sudden, I get to see a web page. Right? Whatever. All that stuff. Probably with a bunch of lists of shoes. Cool. So what we want to talk about today, tomorrow, and Monday is this part right here. What is all this stuff, right? The browser does it for you. When we get to Django, Django will do the response for us. But we're going to do all this ourselves, just so that we can see how tedious it is and appreciate Django in the browser a little bit more. But also to really, really learn the nuts and bolts of what's going on, right? Cool. Are there any questions about just this pattern so far? Probably pretty familiar with this so far. Cool. So under the hood, I type in www.amazon.com/shoes, and the browser formats, basically formats my string, or formats my request for me. And this is, again, like that addressing the envelope. So one thing I forgot to say is the only thing we can send back and forth are strings. The internet is just sending strings back and forth, back and forth. No integers, nothing else, just strings, right? So because that's all we have, that's what we have to work with, right? So we're only sending strings. So when I enter this in my browser and I make the request, it formats it. And so can someone help me out here? Chad, actually, can you? This is going to drive you all nuts, and I hope it does, because I want you to really see. Just read. I want you to read this to me.
Sure.
But here, just say /shoes instead of /doc/whatever.
Okay.
Okay. So this is what the browser is going to do as soon as I press enter here. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
So get, and
Then I'm going to do /shoes.
/shoes/test.
Oh, no, forget that.
Okay.
Just after HTML.
http/1.1.
Keep going. So now I want you to announce when there's a new line and keep reading.
Okay. New line.
So new line. And keep going.
Host www.
We're going to say Amazon.
Amazon.
Yeah, because we're switching in here.
Okay.
Keep going.
New line.
/n.
Accept image/GIF, image/JPEG, and I don't know if this is an etc. or you have a.
Yeah, there's probably more. And you know what? Actually, we're going to change this. Those are perfectly acceptable, but I'm going to say text/HTML, because this is a common one as well. So let's pretend we're done with that line.
Okay, new line. Then
Don't drift. Stay with me. All right, keep going.
accept-language English US, so EN/US.
Yeah.
Or EN dash, sorry.
Dash
EN
US.
dash US.
That's good. Just let's go to what's the next line?
Accept encoding
Cool.
and gzip,
gzip,
deflate.
What? That
Deflate.
r/n.
Yeah.
All right. What else?
User agent,
User agent.
which is I guess the browser.
Yep.
Mozilla /4.0.
Cool. We'll stop here. You're welcome.
It's not done.
Mozilla /4.0. Okay, hold on. So then let's skip that. Then there's content length. Actually, let's just finish it. Sorry. Content length. There's only two more. This content length is an important one.
This is 35.
35, whatever. And so there's a new line, and then there is a blank line, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll just call this body for now. Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. A little mini round of applause. For yourselves too, because I know your focus didn't wait for a second. You followed me through that whole thing. Okay, so this is what your browser does, right? And actually, this is only a small piece of it. These requests can be way longer, right? And way more involved. So what I want to illustrate to you is like, if I just wanted to without the browser, if I wanted to just make a request to Amazon, I could do it without a browser, right? I could write my own program to do that, or I could there's other things that we will learn about in this challenge is ways to make requests that aren't this full browser, right? There's nothing special about the browser in that it can make HTTP requests. There's tons of ways of doing that. What's amazing about a browser is it just does everything, right? It handles the response, it does all this stuff, right? So it's just been incredibly powerful piece of software, right? But so this is what it does. It makes this huge request. And what's important about this is the format of this request is extremely important, right? So if you think about the CSV files we were working with, right? We could not write Python code that would deal with that data if we didn't know how that data was formatted, right? If we didn't know ahead of time we're always going to have values separated by commas, how could we ever parse that data, right? We would never be able to do that because it could be in any format, and you could never predict it, and you could never write code that would do that. So that's really what HTTP is. It's the hypertext transfer protocol. It's the protocol, it's the rules for addressing, whatever you want to call it, formatting these requests and responses that make the internet work. It's the whole way the internet works, right? And if we didn't have these predictable ways of sending data, we would never be able to write the more complex programs that we write, right? So, and John's going to go over this way more, or a little bit more in depth tomorrow, and you're also going to have a chance to play with it today. So don't think you have to memorize this, but I'll walk you through it real quick, okay? The first line of your request is always going to be a method, and we'll talk more about methods tomorrow. But the most popular method is get. And get just means, I just want you to retrieve data for me and bring it back. You don't have to save anything, you don't have to log me in, just go get the data and bring it back, right? So we call these verbs. There's like 5 of them, right? Get is if I just want to get data. Post is if I want to say like, save some stuff to the server, but we'll get to that, okay? Get and post are the most popular. So get is just getting me that. Then where, right? Where. And this will become clearer the more we work with backend. But it's like, I know I'm going to Amazon. It's already getting sent to Amazon. But once I get to Amazon.com, once I'm on the server, where can I find the code to get me the shoes? That's what these URLs are, right? They're just locations, paths. You can even think of them as actions to take, right? Because I'm saying go to Amazon.com and take the shoe action, right? So what's really happening is this is getting here. It's getting to Amazon.com. And then it's basically just running all the code that delivers me back the page with all the shoes on, right? That, again, that'll become clearer the more we go. Then there's the HTTP version. Right now we're on 1.1. That might change. Or actually, it might be on 1.2 and that might be old. I don't remember. And then there's the new line. These new lines are very important, right? Because it dictates that I'm on to the next thing. You can think of these as our commas in a CSV, right? So boom, now I'm on the next thing. So this line will always be like this. Verb, location, version. Then I can have any number of headers, right? And depending on what I'm trying to do, I might need dozens, I might need none, I might need one, right? I think in order for it to work in Chrome, you're at least going to need content length and accept. But you're going to have fun. You're going to research the hell out of this today. So again, any number of headers. All these headers are metadata, right? Just data about what I want to do, where I'm sending. You can see kind of these are some examples of what you might send. Then I have one space. Then I have a blank line. This blank line is really important. It's not like an aesthetic thing. It signals that I am done with my headers. And now everything below this is what we call the body. That's any info I want to send over, right? Anything I need to send there. There is another way to send data, but we'll get to it later. This is the really most common one. Just chills in the body, right? And that gets sent over to the server. Okay. Questions about this? Cool. We have, like I said, you'll go over this more and you'll do some more research. You don't have to memorize this right now. I just want you to know, like, we're just addressing the envelope, right? We're saying, like, I want the shoes page. This is all the stuff I need to do to get it. Good? Okay, so let me erase this. And we'll just talk about this last piece, and then we can take a break. Cool, so this is the request. I'm just going to leave this here for now, okay? This is my request. I'm actually going to have to, forgot. You can, I mean, I don't have these memorized by any means. Like, kind of know them. Let me look, I forgot to look up a response. Anybody thrilled yet?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. Super exciting. I know. This is not the most fun stuff, but it's really important that we know. Cool. So when my request hits the server, this is what we call our back end, right? Runs a bunch of code, and really this is very much what the server is going to be looking at, right? This path right here, and that's going to tell the server what to do next, basically, right? So this verb and this path are what's really important. That's really what the server cares about and all that code. It'll run all the code basically to generate the page, because remember, we're not visiting Amazon, we're having it delivered to us. It'll generate the Amazon page for shoes. We don't have to worry about how it does that yet. And then once it gets all that code, and that code will primarily be HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? HTML, CSS, it'll bundle all that stuff together, then it'll send back the response, right? And we won't write the whole thing out, but an HTTP response has its own way that it needs to be formatted, and it's something like this. Okay. And then it's kind of the same thing. Any number of headers that I want, and then a body. And the body is going to be, in this case, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Cool. So it's going to send this back. And now, again, the browser gets to do that second amazing thing that it knows how to do, which is parse all this garbage, right? So first it made it for us, thank you, because that was annoying. And then we get it back, and we don't have to humanly read, okay, it was okay, blah, 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 here's all, the browser does all that, right? Parses through it, and it sees, oh, I got an okay. So you might have seen these response codes before. How many people have seen a 404? Yeah, not found, right? You've probably seen 404 not found. That means I made a request to the server. The server said, /shoes does not exist over here. I have no idea what you're talking about. So 404 not found. We'll go over more of these tomorrow too. You don't have to memorize all of them, but John will go over more. But 200 means it worked. And here's your stuff, right? So 200, okay. Bunch of headers, might be a bunch of metadata we don't really need to worry about right now. And then at the bottom is all our HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And the browser knows what to do with that stuff. It knows how to take HTML. We're going to learn how to write HTML and CSS today, or we're going to get started with it. And it knows how to go through all that and turn it into my page of shoes. Cool? All right, are there any questions about that stuff? How do you feel? Like on a scale of 1 to 460, where are you at? 222. Okay, cool.
460.
We're only going to cover this for 2 days.
Well, so one, you're going to do. We will be able to. This is going to be the backbone of everything we do for the rest of the time. So we'll be able to re-hit this over and over and over too. And also, like I said, we're going to eventually start using tools that do a lot of this for us. So you walking out of here being able to write this HTTP request from memory, probably not the most important right now. But just knowing what it is and that you could look it up and start to decipher it, that's probably where you're going to want to be by the time. And knowing these methods.
By the time I leave today.
By the time you leave for break. By the time you leave, by the time you leave, by the time you graduate. By the time you graduate. Okay? So I know this is a lot. Real quick, I'll summarize and then I'll let you go on a break. The main things that we want to know is that there is that there are strict ways that we need to format requests and responses. For the biggest purpose being so that we can predict what they're going to look like and actually tell the computer how to read and decipher that data. And then we want to remember that the only thing we're sending back and forth on the internet are strings, just big long strings, right? Then the other thing I want you to know is what is the browser doing? We need to start thinking about, we're used to thinking about the browser as just I don't know, that's what I open, that's the internet. I just click on it and it's the internet. But we need to start understanding a little bit more about how it works and what it is as a piece of software and what it's doing. Because especially when we start writing front-end code, the browser, we're going to live in the browser, right? We'll be writing code that runs in the browser. We'll be debugging in the browser. and we need to understand how that works. Okay, so those are the higher level things that I want you to know. Cool. Okay, I think that was enough fun. So we'll take 10 minutes, and when we come back, we'll talk about HTML and CSS, which is even less fun. Okay.